Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Astro Alchemy. I'm Sarah, and I'm here with Laura, and this is our weekly show where we go over the transits from the perspective of the gate that the sun is currently moving through for human design, and then also for gene keys. We look at the gene key and also the astrology transits. So right now we're about to have a new moon in Sagittarius. As we're recording this, it's in the dark of the moon still, but that new moon is coming up pretty quickly. Yeah, other than that, it is November 23rd at 3 p.m. And yeah, do you want to say anything, Laura, before we?
Yeah, let's give them a bit more of an intro so they know what they're sticking around for, if they're going to stick around. They being you people who are listening. On top of the new moon, Jupiter is also going direct. We're still in the energies of the Neptune square Mars. I forgot the words. That still don't know the words, don't know English. That's still present. Mercury and Venus are conjunct in Sagittarius. Do anything else? Gene key 34 makes us all manifesting generators, which we'll get into, but I guess that's it. Yeah, I don't know. I'll share my screen for y'all. Here we go. I believe this is refreshed. I'll do it again. This is the human design chart of the moment. If you are watching this, hello Spotify. If you want a visual, please go to geneticmatrix.com and scroll down, and you'll see your chart of the moment for the moment you are on your computer or phone screen. Except I don't know if it shows up on phones. Does the chart of the moment? I don't think this shows up on phones. Just do it on your computer. Hello, we have Gene Key 34 active right now with the sun and 20 active with the earth. These are one of the three channels I mentioned 2 weeks ago that are programming partner channels. So not only, programming partners means that the sun and earth are exactly opposite of one another, just the connection between the sun and the earth in that sense, because we don't usually use the earth in astrology, but it's used in human design and gene keys. And there are three pairs that form channels in the human design circuitry. So 4323 is the one I mentioned 2 weeks ago because the sun was in 43. Another is 4037, and this week we have 2034, which is where we're at right now. So it is the manifesting generator channel. It's a direct connection between the sacral center to the throat. What's a manifestor, you may be asking? A manifestor is the person who has a motor connected to their throat. The four motors are the sacral, the root, the emotional solar plexus, and the ego, heart, willpower center. Has lots of names. And the sacral center being one of them, connects to the throat, gives us manifesting energy, potential, definition, and the defined sacral mixed cell generators for the moment, or it's what creates a generator in someone's own birth chart. And so it's both generating and manifesting all in one. And it's a lot. 2034. Anyways, 34 is sitting here in the sacral center. 20 is over here up in the throat. Currently, we're in a line 2 day, so we can read you the little info package on geneticmatrix.com. The taming power. No, it's not the taming power of the great. It's just the power of the great. Great power. I can't remember the I Ching name for it, but power is only great when its display or use serves the common good. The gate of power. Currently with line 2, we have Mars in exaltation, or the potential for exaltation. The ability when victory is in sight, not to lose perspective, except they spelled lose wrong. They put lose. Sorry, pet peeve. The power that grows when victory is in sight. And also Venus enters into detriment here, a tendency to be emotionally carried away by the smell of victory, the power for growth limited by impatience. And line 2s are projected onto based on what someone else thinks that they are capable of. Second lines and fifth lines are both projection lines. We can read the earth too for you. Contemplation of the now, recognition and awareness in the now, which transforms understanding into right action, the gate of the now. Line 2, the dogmatist, restrictive and intentionally limited understanding, Venus in exaltation, the limitation if personal. And okay, so this is interesting. If we have Venus in this channel, Like
Yeah.
in line 2, it automatically puts Earth into exaltation, but puts the sun or 34 into detriment. So it's interesting if you have Venus conjunct the sun if you have it like as your birth channel and your sun Earth channel. It is interesting because it's dynamic. Anyways, the limitation of personal and exclusive is less negative through aesthetic withdrawal, a restrictive awareness of the now. Moon in detriment, the gift through expression of leading others down a narrow and restrictive path, the power to lead others down a narrow path. So anyways, this gate, this whole channel is part of integration circuitry. Oh dear, forgot the word. Yeah, it is. Is it integration? Yes. And it's interesting because there's 4 gates that are connected that form 4 channels. Because you have 20, 34, 10, and 57 that are all connected together. So you could have 34, 10, 34, 20, 34, 57, actually a lot more channels. 57, 10, 57, 20, 57, 34. Anyways, I feel like I repeated one, but lots of potential for different combinations within these channels and gates because most gates are just 2 channels. I mean, most channels are 2 gates and that's it. And this one is different. It's part of individual circuitry, which makes it very mutative and personal. It's about your own individual experience of something in your own mutation. Because of that, it can lead to melancholy when there is no mutation happening. And it's also highly creative. But anyways, 20, if you have the sun in either 20 or 34, you're going to have a whole channel, which means there's a lot of manifesting generators out there in the world with this channel. But 20 is all about the now. It's the voice of the now, being able to be in the present and speak of the present moment and not get caught up in any other thing. It's very contemplative. And 34 is about brute force. It is like very, very powerful. We'll get into that with the gene keys, but it's an interesting gate because if you look at the purpose of the sacral center, it's life force energy. It's generative potential. And part of that is sexual capacity. The emotional solar plexus is sexual desire, but whether or not one is capable or has the energy for intimacy is within these gates. But 34, I don't want to say it lacks it, but it works on a different frequency. And it's usually not sexually, it doesn't have sexual capacity. It's too busy. It's too busy in its own world, doing its own thing to be aware of the other. Part of that is the fact that it's individual circuitry, that there's, gate 3 and gate 14, which are also individual within the sacral. But 34 is its own special thing because it's integration circuitry. It just wants to do its own thing and be in its own flow and kind of like blocks everything else out. Connecting to that 34 and 43 are codon partners. They're part of the same codon organine. I don't think that's it. It is asparagine. It was with the letter A. Asparagine. And if you remember 2 weeks ago, if not, go visit that video. But 43 deals with deafness and the ability to tune everyone out to be able to hear what it is that you need to hear within your own mind for awareness and for insight. And so 34 has that similar quality to it in that it kind of pushes things away for it to be able to use its energy correctly. Being a generative energy, it has to respond. So I feel like there's misinformation about what it means to be a manifesting generator and how you can use manifesting strategy to use your energy correctly. And like, sure, maybe we can all use manifesting energy in moments and form, see what happens. But sacral centers tend to do well when they respond. So more so than just informing other people and about what you're doing and doing things and trying to force your way into situations, try respond life and see what happens. And so 34, flows and works so much more efficiently. Again, 43 being efficient, 34 being the efficiency of using your energy. It's most efficient when you're responding to things and not initiating from the mind, which is a significant theme within the gene key. The melancholy of 34 is melancholy of not being able to use your energy in the now or not knowing what to use your energy for in the now. I think Sarah would attest to that little theme of melancholy today. She's in her 3rd line energy of things not going to plan or not working out the way her mind wants them to. In other news, the moon's currently in 14, so we're back to this lovely channel of the beach. Thought we were out of it. We're not. 214 is active for us. In other news, Mars is out of 12. Yahoo! That's really nice and exciting. 12 is a melancholic gate. So there's like this, we've had a lot of pressure in the melancholy, and like slowly things are kind of leaving the melancholic gates and like easing up. It's progressive. It's not just like bam, all of a sudden everything at once. So Mars is out of the melancholic energy and it's now in gate 45. Gates 1 and 2, which are active by the North and South node, will change on November 27th, I believe. The nodes will move into 44 and 24. What else is there? Well, obviously this week we have 3420. And like I said last week, if you were here with us, soon we're going to get into other channels, other circuits with the sun and the earth. We're going to get into the collective and tribal, and we're going to stay away from the not integrated, but the individual circuits for at least like a little breather. I think it'll be nice for us all. I think that's it. Mercury and Venus are conjunct in gate 9, which I like because it's my sun gate, so I'm happy about it. But I don't know how anyone else is feeling about it. But I'm happy with that conjunction. And it's the 5th line T, which is my line 9.5. So I'm in a good mood today. But other than that, I think that covers what's happening on the human design side. Sarah, is there anything else you'd like to bring up?
No, I think you did a really good job of covering everything. And I think, just to say that we are moving out of individual circuitry, generally speaking, but having the sun and earth there is kind of like, and I don't know what the next key is or gate is, but I wonder if it's individual as well.
916.
Okay.
And then 26, then 5, or then 5, then 26.
So go ahead.
It's Mars square Neptune. I know that I have the whole Promethean godhead, so I don't remember the order, but it's 9, 5, 26, and 11. Those 4 gates. They're 3 collective and 1 tribal. So at least for the next 4 weeks, or 6 times 4, 24 days will not be in, like, the sun won't be in individual, except the earth will, because 11, 12. So there's a teeny tiny bit of individual energy coming our way, but not as much.
Okay, so this is kind of, and this is happening in the new moon is happening in this gate too. So that is important to note, that 34 is going to be where this lunar phase is going to kick off for Sagittarius season for the new moon. So yeah, no, that's all I have to say, but I am looking forward to the sun not being in individual circuitry anymore.
It's been a long process. Yeah, I'm over it. Okay, we have Gene Key 34 with the Shadow of Force. I always forget these words and we say them every week, and we have been for like 2 years now. The gift of strength and the city of majesty. It's part of the Code and Ring of Destiny, again with gate 43 or Gene Key 43. Great power is the I Ching name. Thunder over heaven are the hexagrams. So we have 3 yang lines on the base, the bottom trigram, and then a yang and 2 yins in the top trigram. Asparagine is the amino acid. The dilemma of this Gene Key is trying, and the victim, whatever, shadow, repressive, the 2 shadow states. What's the word? What is it called? I don't know, but the
reactive and repressive.
I know, but is there like a subtitle for like all these things or no? Like, how do you group what this is? It's the shadow, but it's blank also at the same time.
Yeah, the reactive shadow.
The natures, the repressive and reactive nature. I don't know. My brain.
Okay. Yeah, that's not
back to normal.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, self-effacing and bullish are the 2. We'll get into that. Again, programming partner is 20 with superficiality as the shadow self-assuredness as the gift and presence as the city. And another theme for it is the beauty of the beast. I think that lays out everything in this graphic for you. If you're wondering, if you're on Spotify, hey Spotify again, I'm on genekeys.com//gene-key-34, and you can find all the gene keys there if you want to have a visual. But anyways, this gene key is interesting force. The dilemma of force is trying. This is like the major antithesis to strategy and authority. With strategy and authority, we're told like that there's a natural flow to life in which the body just does what the body's supposed to do without the mind trying to do anything about it. And yet when we come to this particular gene key, the mind tries to get involved, I think, through this link with 43 and that being part of the brain, or our ability to be cognitive and to conceptualize. But yeah, the mind tries to override the body and decide what the body's going to do. And then the mind is usually wrong. And then the body tries doing what the mind wants it to do. And the body struggles and fails. And it's like swimming up a river, or like a very intense, insane river, going against the flow of the water and saying like, no matter what, I am going to get to this destination on this river, going in this direction. I don't care what's in my way. I don't care that the water is coming down at me, and just trying to force things that aren't meant to be forced. And so, yeah, the shadow, Richard Rudd talks about in the book how it is part of our developmental history or evolutionary history, with how we became, not Homo sapien, what's the word? Two-legged creatures, how we became upright. And I don't know, maybe Sarah can speak on this more, but the fact that, before, way back in the day, our ancestors being, all the creatures of the earth, not just humanoids, but they were focused on survival. Again, 34 connects to 57, which is survival in the now. There's a link to being able to survive in the present moment and not die. And this is the life force that allows for that to happen. You have the instinctive intuition to tell you this is dangerous, this is not, do this or don't to survive. The ability to be able to be in the present moment and have your, awareness in the present moment, and to be able to know what to do in the present moment. And this is the force, like the actual energy that's going to let you do the thing in the present moment to survive. And so it's deeply connected to our evolution and our genetics, that we think that we have to force things and be aggressive in the way in which we try to accomplish things, to make sure that everything's going to go to plan, and that's not the case, as we've slowly learned over time, that really there's a flow state, and that flow state comes through response. And if you just take your foot off the gas pedal, you'll actually realize that your car is trying to go in the other direction. If you're going uphill and it's not working for you, if you're trying to swim up the river, if you just drop your paddles, the river is going to turn you around and you'll be taken exactly where you need to go. And so, yeah, this theme of force is fairly significant. I have quotes, but while I search for my quotes, Sarah, want to say something?
Yeah, this is a pretty intense this is a pretty intense gate / key. I mean, there's obviously a lot to be said, and I've been having my own little struggle bus moments all day actually with it. I said something along the lines to Lora of like, okay, like I'm starting to understand where the urge to like hurt human life comes from, because essentially what happens, like, and I was going to talk about the 14 too, because last week when we were talking about individuation and homogenization. And I think this key actually kind of gives us a little bit of an answer, because with the 14, basically, like, there's this quality of this self-destructive quality when it's not being aware of itself, and without the awareness that the gift quality presents, we end up in situations where we're basically like we're frustrated, right? That's the shadow or the not self tendency of the sacral. And so we just push all of our energy towards something without thinking, without any consciousness around it. And that's literally how you break things. I mean, you could break yourself, you could break someone else, you could break a project that you're working on when this type of energy is just kind of let loose upon everyone, and upon like the external environment, and upon like your fractal, upon the collective, upon the group, or the kind of clan that you involve yourself with. So it's a very, very intense energy that it's not just in the mind, it's very physical in a sense. And I think that something that he says is that you would not even call it selfishness, since that implies an awareness that others exist. So he's saying that this isn't selfish. This shadow creates a kind of intense self-absorption that, when applied to a modern human, leads to brute power without self-awareness. This 34th shadow therefore gives rise to a basic human law. At low frequencies, all human beings are destructive to the collective. The nature of modern society means that DNA, when behaving according to these archaic rules, inevitably destroys itself. So just to touch on the idea of homogenization, the powers that be, you can call them whatever you want, they're far more interested in us vibrating at the lowest frequency, because it's easier to control us when we're there. And they might not necessarily say it quite like that, but that is the intention, because the more they can control us, the more power that they get from us, the more energy they get from us. You can say it's more capital they get from us, the collective. And so this is the low side of homogenization, right? When we talked about individuation last week, and how the quality of being an individual is not always inherently positive, because sometimes you're doing it from your ego, from your not self, and you're doing it out of harmony with the flow of life around you. It's like, well, there's also the quality of homogenization where everybody's kind of functioning at this lower level frequency, where they're just so like kind of homogenized that they're just destroying collectively everything in sight. And like, it gave me pause today, because I'm like, wow, like there's no, like I look around and I was out shopping, I was at an outlet mall, and like there's no soul anywhere. And so it's not necessarily that it's just death or destruction in a way that seems like demolition or murder. It's also destruction of just steamrolling over the things that require gentleness and consciousness to perceive, that have been imbued with the qualities of soul. And when you're out at these large department stores, right, where everybody's just kind of trying to numb themselves by shopping, there's no soul. It's all just carbon copies of everything else. And so I was just struck by how the destruction that this gate talks about, the force, right, the negative side of force doesn't just show up in ways where we think, like hurting people in a physical way, but it also shows up in the sense that we become blind to what actually is alive with soul. And because we're blind to it, we're that much it's that much easier to kill, right? It's that much easier to not allow to grow. It's that much easier to step on. It's that much easier to essentially destroy. And so that's been something, especially because Sagittarius season is during this time where we're all just about to go, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, if you celebrate it, if you live in the United States, and the day after that, of course, is Black Friday. It's like Black Friday falls probably most of the time. I don't know if it's always the time, but many times it's going to fall on the 34. And talk about like the stampeding crowds waiting to get their television sets that are 50% off. And it's like, and for what? You know what I mean? Like, for what? So you can sit at home all day watching TV? Like, what's the what's the end game here? And so there's just this total lack of consciousness that I see like around, and that I've been very hyper aware of with 34 being active. And it's pretty upsetting because, you know, as someone who's a non-energy, well, I have energy, but who's a non-sacral person, you know, I don't have access to this kind of consistent energy force, but sacral people do. And like they have the energy, the 34, not all of them, but some of them just consistently have the energy to steamroll over things. And it's literally how like the West was won, and how like all of these just gigantic carbon copy capitalistic stores have like cropped up everywhere, and the amount of nature that's, you know, in places like where I am right now has been minimized because shopping and consumerism is more important. So can everyone tell that I'm in a mood today or what?
But it's a valid point to piggyback off that. Like I don't know if it was yesterday, the day before. Well, I don't know. So maybe it wasn't even in 8:34, but I was grocery shopping and I went to Costco, and like I was part of the mob. You know, we were in a hurry. We tried to get through as quickly as possible. I was just like very impatient with all the slow walkers. I hate slow walkers. Sorry if you're a slow walker, like speed up. What's your point in taking your time? And so I was steamrolling through the store. And then afterwards, we go to Trader Joe's, and it's like a whole other quality, especially in California. Like everyone at Trader Joe's is just so happy and so friendly. And so I just started talking to one of the workers there, and we're just like talking about how like everyone is crazy. And she was just so sweet, and she was embodying the Majesty, which we'll get into. But Richard Rudd has a great story in the audio contemplation, and with, you know, all the three of these, how they roll into one. There is a character who has force, there is a character who has strength, and there is a character who has majesty. And this lady at the grocery store, she was so sweet and so like majestic with her just like breath of fresh air, that she completely changed me. Like this is a mutative potential of individual circuitry. When it bumps into the right person, it can mutate them and create a difference. And so she bumped into me and we were talking, and like my entire attitude for the rest of the day was significantly different compared to like the steamrolling that happened at Costco, trying to get all the things for a ridiculous holiday that's just, yeah, not a nice holiday and just breeds on consumerism. But it's funny because I have the same quote as you. My other quote is, force is always rooted in the mind, whereas power comes from the belly. Richard Rudd talks about how like this is connected to the sacral plexus, the sacral and the solar plexus, all that. So force is always rooted in the mind, whereas power comes from the belly. Power is natural, grounded, and universally connected to all life, flowing as it does from the great umbilical center within your being. The awareness within the belly is beyond self-awareness because it is beyond the self. As such, it can be called pure awareness. Force happens when you forget to trust this true center of pure awareness. So yeah, force. Anyways, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I needed a minute anyway, but to calm down. But no, I mean, like I said, I could see why when this energy gets into the shadow frequency. And actually there's a book, I think it's by Dr. David Hawken. I don't know, that's actually the name of it, Force versus Power, and how one is literally on the low end of energetic frequencies and the other is on the high end. So like you switch from force to power once you cross a specific emotional threshold. That you know there's, we could get into that a completely separate time, but essentially like this was one of the people that popularized the idea, I guess, of raising your frequency in like a, you know, not just spiritual but also scientific way. So that's something I wanted to touch on. But then, you know, I like how you talked about how there's like kind of this like transformative or alchemical quality of people who are functioning correctly with it, and it's completely like unself-conscious, right? So they're just kind of like energy like portals where they're just like pouring out, which is just pouring out of them. And you know, if they're in the gift, it's really like wonderful and energizing to be around. there was something else I wanted to say. Oh, we talked about how, okay, the repressive nature being self-effacing, and how that is basically like, again, like the energy gets, instead of having a place to put it, it gets tamped down, and then it leads to like burnout for people who have this, because they're basically like running them, they're kind of like, the energy is kind of moving in loops within them, and they're not allowing it to come out in any way. And then there's the bullish quality, which of course is like what we were saying before about being a steamroller. And just like the quality of like, if you are frustrated because you can't figure out, or you can't get into alignment with the right expenditure of energy, or the right way to expend your energy, then like you're just going to act like a bully. You're just going to be throwing your energy all over the place. And I think that is where I came up with the idea that like, oh, okay, I understand how like heinous acts get committed by people, like in a civil society, because it's like they have all of this energy inside of them. They don't know what to do with it. They get so angry, and it's like it has to go somewhere. And the trick, of course, is to like learn how to channel it into something that actually is satisfying for the sacral center. But it's, tall order when we're all collectively stuck in the lower frequencies. If you see somebody that's in a higher frequency, then it's like, okay, like this is the exception, I would say, not the rule of modern society, although it's becoming more prevalent, I think. So that's my little bit of hope for all of my like holiday. Well, actually, it's really my anti-holiday spirit, because I'm just like, I do not like this time of year. I do not think that anyone is celebrating the right things. I do not like what it does to people, yada, yada, yada. And so yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the shadow and the gift. Do you want to touch on the gift at all?
I do, but to continue with the shadow, there's something else that I wanted to say, which let's see if I can remember what it was. I don't think I can. Oh, I can. It's part of the channel of charisma, this energy. And again, like 20 is an integral part of this energy. It's not just 34 on its own. Like you can have 34 on its own, but it's most impactful when it's connected to 20, and that is being present in the now, like fully immersed in the present moment. And so I feel like this force energy comes out when you're fixated on the past, trying to think of like what went wrong and how it can be altered, or projecting into the future with worry, like trying to change things that are not in your control right now. And so the true potential comes when you're just in the present moment, inside your body, connecting to what is, and not trying to be outside of your own actual reality. And I feel like that kind of ties into the gift. I have a lot of quotes for the gift because it was just like the entire chapter was great. You should just read it on your own. But strength, I feel like it's just like womanly power, like being able to give birth, like releasing the control in the birth process, which I don't have children, so I shouldn't speak to, but just the magic that comes from releasing the control and letting the body exude its own strength, and have children, birth children in this very miraculous, very strong way. I feel like this is the heart of this gift. But the 34th gift employs the same terrific primal vitality of the shadow, but unlike the shadow, it does so through appropriate activities and correct timing. The result is the creative manifestation of aligned life force that always catches attention and praise of others. Individual strength is something absolutely natural to all human beings. Obviously, we are not talking about physical strength here, although people with this gift often can be physically strong. We are talking about the ability to act in harmony with natural forces, the real definition of strength, hence pregnancy. Strength has no element of trying or forcefulness within it. It simply flows out of you, and you become effortlessly at one with the activity. Effortlessness in this context does not mean that there is no exertion. There may be great exertion, but there is no resistance. This fluid efficiency is one of the main hallmarks of the 34th gift. There's more. We need to remember that the 34th gift has no awareness of itself at any level. Obviously, the tendency to draw attention draws negative attention at the shadow frequency. The idea of like, oh, look at me, I'm so strong, look at everything I'm capable of. wanting that attention from the throat center, because the throat center is where we get attention from the world around us. And the not self theme of the throat center is looking for attention. But anyways, but at the higher frequencies, it draws positive attention. It is out of the 34th gift that all kinds of examples of human strength are born, because when you're being yourself in the now moment, you will attract the right attention. True heroism occurs again, not again, but Richard talks about heroism being a theme of this gene key of how, like, when a person does the heroic act, they're not planning it, they're not anticipating it. It just is a mutative now moment of like something needs to get done, and they're going to show up and their body's going to respond to it and do the thing without thinking about the consequences, just because it's the correct thing to do. So true heroism occurs without awareness and is a wholly individual act. This is why every human being alive feels deep resonance to the heroes of myth or the heroes of contemporary culture. Heroism denotes strength. Ironically, though, true strength is quite unaware of itself. I think that's it for the strength, the gift on my end. It's just so good. It's like, I don't know, I feel like this is a major theme of being human. Like when you look at the world around us, most people are generators, and not that everyone has this channel, but like there's 9 also, which we'll get into next week, but 9 is also very generator themed, generator gate, because it's about building, about like working towards something over and over and over again for it to like grow and expand into something in true generator fashion. But I feel like this is like the force, the life force of the generator that allows the generator to do the thing that's eventually going to become something. And I feel like it's fascinating to watch all the generators around and when they're trying to force their way for things to happen, and when they can effortlessly shine with their energy and just let things unfold without trying to make things happen. It's really nice. But again, strategy and authority, respond, don't initiate, or try not to. Well, I feel like that's just a conundrum in and of itself. You can't tell someone to try not to, like you do it or don't. In the audio contemplation, Richard Rudd mentions Yoda and Star Wars, and Yoda tells Luke, as Luke is trying to embrace the Force, do or do not. There is no try. And so your body will just flow in its correctness and do something that's correct, or it won't. And it's that simple. And a lot of my observation of generators in my life has been watching them try to do things that are not happening. And it's just like, I can't tell you not to, because I'm not invited. Like, it's none of my business. So I just observe them in their frustration. It's just a show. You just watch it happen, watch their frustration like unfold and expand in their inability to like get whatever they're trying to do done. And it's fascinating to watch. Not fascinating to, I mean, maybe it is fascinating to participate in, but I'm guessing it's unpleasant to participate in, but yeah, fascinating to watch. But those are my thoughts for the strength gift. Sarah, is there anything you want to say for the city?
Yeah, actually for this one there is, and I like how you just talked about how this is like, it's like one of the great lessons of being human. Like I feel like this, although all 64 gates and keys have to do with it, there's something very, very like essential here is what it feels like. And you know, Richard Rudd talks about how in things like Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, like all of these things sprouted out of a individual basically manifesting this channel, the 3420. And it's like kind of funny and silly that all of us think that if we start doing these things exactly as they were taught by the people who like manifested them in a way, that like we'll be on the path to enlightenment. And of course there's something to be said about discipline, but like Richard Rudd basically says that like you're never going to get into the state of just an embodied essence of divine energy by doing something that's pre-planned, like pre-concocted, pre-structured. And so like, you know, we do these practices because somebody at some point, it just like spontaneously emerged out of them. And those people were functioning from the city of Majesty. But like, we're not going to be able to get there because we're doing someone else's like again, pre-canned, majestic outpouring, and by it being pre-canned or pre-made, premeditated, it's no longer going to be flowing within the presence of kind of each moment. And so I love that, because of course, like, I'm a hardcore yoga person, and the thing that I know more than anything is that willpower is not enough to get you into flow. Willpower is actually antithetical to flow. And of course, like, we think about great artists where they are, when they finally get into flow, it's like what they make is incredible. But like, all of the efforting that they were doing prior to was really only for them to like hone their skills, but not actually be able to erect whatever kind of art that they ultimately erect when they're finally in flow. And so there's this, like you were saying, the Yoda quote, "Do or do not, there is no try." It's like, if you try, it's you're done. Like, it's over. There's you're not doing it anymore, in a sense. And to kind of go back to individuation and like the quality of individuation versus individuality. For the Siddhi, he says the divine essence of creation can only move freely through the body when the identity has ceased. And so again, like we talked about with the 14, individuation is more of like being in alignment with the universal blueprint than it is about projecting like what your ego idea of yourself is out into the world. And you can feel the difference internally, and more than likely people who have eyes to see it will be able to tell the difference too, but you can't fake it. Like, you're either in it or you're not. So I thought that was interesting. One other thing that he talks about, just to circle back to the art again, is that there's these Tibetan mandalas that get made out of sand. I'm sure everyone or many people have seen like images of them or seen the practice. I can't remember what the name of the practice is exactly, but they make these incredibly intricate mandalas over months, and then within a matter of like no time, they're completely wiped away. And that's kind of the nature of this channel and this gate, of just like creating something without really concern for like why you're doing it or how it's going to be received in the future. It's all like present moment awareness. So last quote, "When life is not interfered with in any way, it becomes highly fluid and efficient. The more you try to force life to flow where you would like it to go, as opposed to where it wants to go, the less efficient you become and the more energy you use." And I think that, kind of sums up the 34, the Majesty, the Siddhi for me. Lora, feel free to add anything that you'd like to before we move on.
Yeah, there's a story that Richard shares in the audio contemplation, and I'll do my best to replicate it, but it's nice, and it connects to this like idea of martial arts. And I really like what you were saying about how people like think, oh yeah, if I do all these steps then I'm going to get the same mutation that the person who came up with it got it. And like, that's not the case. We each go through our own individual mutative process. And yes, there is a time and place for all the repetition and discipline, but that's like not within this particular energy. This is just for like the individual mutation. But anyways, the story is that there's a student of Aikido, which is martial art, and I think the name of it is the art of reconciliation. Anyways, he's been like working super hard at his martial art and like getting really strong and really confident in himself. And he's on a train, and like this drunk man hops on the train, and he's just like steamrolling. He's forceful, he's disruptive, he's pushing his energy on everyone. He's just like a little tornado within the train. And this young man's like, ooh, like I can use my strength. I can use all my training to take this man down, because he's going to harm like the pregnant woman with her child and blah, blah, blah. So he's like trying to anticipate what to do, how to like best tackle this situation. Then all of a sudden, like this little old man calls for the drunk man's attention, goes, hey, come over here, I want to tell you something. And so the drunk man eventually like gets distracted by the old man, goes over to him. He's like, what? And the old man starts telling him about his garden that he's growing and like all the trees and the plants and how he likes to drink tea with his wife. And he just starts having a conversation with this old man, not trying to, force him, not trying to dominate with strength, but with this gentleness of having a conversation and trying to connect to the humanity within this strong drunk man. That's like where the transformation happens. And this is a very short version of it. It's written out somewhere on the internet. Look up Aikido, but you'll see the longer version. But the point of it is like you have this old man who just embodies the majesty with gentleness, with going with the flow and like not trying, like going with the flow of the conversation and with how the old man is, or the strong man is reacting. And whereas like the martial arts person like is watching it all unfold and happen and realizing that strength is not necessarily needed in extreme situations, and that majesty is sometimes what's called for. Anyways, it's better when Richard Redd tells it or when the true author tells it, not me. So go find that for yourself if you want to. But yeah, that was the conclusion of my thoughts with this gene key. It's a potent one. It's a good one, and I feel like it's very common with a lot of people. I mean, I guess it's like evenly proportioned to all the other gene keys, but it's a good one in the sense that it has a lot of power to it and strong charisma to it and strong potential within it to shape the world around us. But anyways, we can move on to astrology if that's all right with you.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, here's the chart of the moment. Like we said earlier, there's a new moon in Sagittarius, and it's hard to see the numbers because they're so cramped up. So I'll scroll down for you. Currently, the sun's at 1.5 degrees Sagittarius, and the moon is currently at, well, now I guess at this point in time, maybe the moon has already moved it to Sagittarius. I'm not sure because it was at 29.5 degrees Scorpio. I don't remember.
Reload the page really quick.
Yeah, I'll have to do it this way. Do you remember the exact degree or the time that the
it's supposed to, I think it's supposed to happen 2:30 or 2:50 p.m. Pacific time.
Okay.
Or yeah, so that
Yes.
means it would be like 6 o'clock today or something.
Yeah, no, it's much more neater. Yeah, the moon is at 0 degrees Sagittarius. Sun's at 1.5. Mercury and Mars are at 9, 10. Not Mercury, Mars, Venus, Mercury. We're still in the square with Mars over here at 21 degrees and Neptune at 22 degrees. Though it's lessened, especially with Mars, being in 45. Yeah, Sarah, do you want to talk about the new moon?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different interesting factors to it. And like the first one is that Jupiter is going to go direct. So Jupiter in Pisces, which has been retrograde now for, actually, I don't know for how long, but it is going to go direct because like I said, it's been retrograde. It was in Aries before, and then it retrograded back into Pisces for probably like a little bit over a month. And now it's going to start going direct and heading back for Aries. And so that's something notable because Jupiter rules over the sign of Sagittarius, or Jupiter is Sagittarius's home, one of Sagittarius's home. The masculine fire domicile of Jupiter is Sagittarius. So we have Jupiter at home in Pisces ruling over this new moon and turning direct very shortly before or very shortly after the new moon happens. And so, just as far as the ruling planet goes, I think it's always important to see what the ruling planet is up to catch some kind of vibes. It feels very, is fecund a word for fertile? Because that's just coming into my mind for some reason. It feels like very fertile. There just seems something very fertile about this new moon, and the other thing that I was telling Laura about before is that with our last lunar cycle, you know, and actually this is the first time that we're having a new moon in Sagittarius in like over 18 months, probably like 2 years actually, where the new moon is not an eclipse. So that's something interesting, because for most of 2020 and 2021, we had Sagittarius Gemini nodes being activated every time the sun or moon was going into Sagittarius and Gemini. And so this is the first time that it's not an eclipse, but we just did have an eclipse over Scorpio season with the nodes in Scorpio and Taurus. And we had our lunar eclipse, or I'm sorry, we had our solar eclipse on October 23rd, where, you know, the sun and the moon were both in Scorpio, and the sun and the moon were conjoining a Venus that was in Scorpio as well. And they were actually cazimi very close to the time that the eclipse was happening. And so for the lunar eclipse that happened on November 8th in Taurus, we had a Mercury cazimi. So we had like this crazy Venus Mercury relationship happening within both of those kind of high points of the last lunation cycle around the eclipses. And now we have Venus and Mercury conjoined in Sagittarius for this this new moon that we're having in Sagittarius. And this is actually going to take us, as we move into the month of December, we're going to start seeing Venus and Mercury as evening stars in the sky. So when the sun sets, we'll be able to actually see them after they get about 15 degrees or so away from the sun. So whenever a planet is within 15 degrees on either side of the sun, you can't see it because it's too close for us, at least for our just earthbound eyes to be able to see it. But when they do come back and you're able to see Mercury and Venus, because important to note here too, both of those planets only get so far away from the sun. They're from our perspective, they can't go more than a sign or two, depending on where the sun is in a specific sign away from it. So Mercury and Venus are conjoined. They've been doing this little dance for the past few days, and within like probably like 5, 6, 7 days, we're going to be able to see them. And so there's something of a being able to see the fruits or the kind of actual things that the lunar and solar eclipse that was happening in Scorpio had initially planted, like actually being able to see some of that energy come out and come into fruition. I think when the two planets that were playing major roles in the eclipses also are becoming visible. So that is something that I would, you know, just be aware of. It feels like a pretty fun lunation cycle compared to the eclipses, which were just like fire and explosions and like, you know, just moments of extreme energy being released and contraction and expansion. So I'm looking forward to it personally, despite my disdain for the holidays in America. But I think it'll be a fun Sagittarius season. Laura, do you want to touch on anything?
Yeah, well, first off, I think it's weird that Sagittarius gets the stereotype that it's fun. Not necessarily true, but everyone's been saying like, oh yeah, it's a fun one. It's a fun one. Like, says who? Are you like, maybe your life is fun, but that's not the truth for everyone. Something Sarah mentioned to me about like Jupiter going direct in Pisces. I think he like complimented something about it, like, oh yeah, I like Jupiter in Pisces. I'm like, do you remember? I remember the last time, you know, I have the dates in front of us, but Jupiter was in Pisces, then it moved forward or into Aries and then went retrograde again. And I really like Aries Jupiter energy. I don't like Jupiter Pisces energy. It's not my jam. So anyways, do I not have the dates? So
but just to qualify that, you also have it in your 12th house. So like, you know, 12th house energy is certainly not my jam. And of course, like as is true with everything, you always have to qualify it by looking at your own chart. I think that there's been a lot of like intense energy coming up, and I feel like this is kind of like, and oh yeah, just to touch on Sagittarius too before I allow you to continue. Sagittarius, of course, is like there's definitely like a philosophical like nihilism in Sagittarius if it's on the one side of Sagittarius. So it's not always just like sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns for Sagittarius people. But it does have to do with Jupiter, and so there's something there. You can continue.
Well, there's something there, is there? Just going back to things we've been saying before, we're in the court of mutation. As of when the sun was in gate 1, it's a continuation of the quarter of mutation until the sun moves through gate 13. I don't know. I think that's the starting point of the quarter of initiation. But the quarter of mutation is about processing death and like living life to die. And it's morbid, and it's not rainbow sunshine.
It's not just death, though. It's not just death. It's processing endings.
To die. It
well,
is
no,
though.
you could call it death, but it doesn't actually have to be death, like in a physical sense.
Jupiter rules the quarter of mutation. I'm not gonna say that, but Jupiter rules the quarter of mutation, and Jupiter is in charge of, from the human design perspective, of the incarnation process, which is dictating when humans come in and out of this reality. It's in charge of, the exit point. It is
everything, but everything comes in and out of the reality because humans aren't the only things that are sentient.
Yeah, right. But just the incarnation process for everything. Not just humans, but it's with like, okay, you come in and then you got to go at some point. And so it's embracing that. And like all the gates within the quarter of mutation have this quality of understanding what's the purpose of life when we're looking at the fact that life is temporary. And so with 34, it's part of we're still in the godhead of Hades, and the next one's the godhead of Prometheus. And within the godhead of Hades, there's kind of like this distraction from death of like, yes, you're going to die. And so you're trying to be busy. It's very individual because all 4 gates are individual within Hades. Being busy with your existence to distract yourself from the fact that eventually you got to go. So it's trying to leave a legacy behind, trying to be busy with gate 34 and whatever you're doing in the now moment. Trying to distract yourself with the thoughts and the insights of understanding what's going on. But when we come to Prometheus, it's very much about like there is a historical impact to the energy of Prometheus. Like if we look at our evolutionary standpoint and how humans operated hundreds and hundreds of years ago, after the program, I give it quotes, but what rules us is operating system that wants genetic continuity, wants us to keep procreating and maintain the human race. And we're also here for self-reflected awareness. Like that's according to the voice, why we're here, what the purpose of human beings is, so to speak. And so with that, like once we reach that point of like, okay, yeah, you have self-reflected awareness once you reach a certain age and you can be aware of yourself, and then you reach your point of genetic continuity and you procreate, the program's done with you. And at that point, like, what do you do once you reach that point? That's what the court of mutation is for. Like, okay, from fulfilling your purpose for the program to death, what's life all about? And with the Promethean godhead, which, we're going to get into for the next 4 weeks, it's about, Ra talked about how it's about how humans would go off to war. Like, okay, you live your purpose, you procreate, you have children. And then there'd be some big grand thing going on in the collective to distract all the humans and say, go give yourself, go give your life in honor of this purpose, the Crusades or this or that war. And people were warring all the time. And it was like only within, I don't know, I mean, people still are warring, but the emphasis of warring has severely lessened, thankfully, in our history. But for like all those ages in which humans have been warring and giving their lives for some sort of cause that is from this Sagittarian energy of the Promethean godhead of, it's not about distracting yourself, but it's about like reaching the end and having a reason why you're reaching the end. Anyways, like I can't unsee that from Sagittarius now. So like, yeah, happy-go-lucky, sure, but like really, no, it's not. The heart of it, I mean, it has different layers to it. Anyways, getting off my soapbox for a second to talk about the new moon. I think, like Sarah said, it is super interesting about the Kazimis and how they're impacting this particular new moon. I wonder, like, what are your thoughts on the fact that Venus and Mercury are now visible in the night sky compared to the morning sky? Because when they're retrograde and they go through this alchemical rebirthing process, they go from evening star to morning star. And when I think about evening to morning visibility, I think about, with the evening, planets are more powerful, they're more noticeable, they're brighter because there's the contrast with the dark. It's ruled by the feminine, ruled by the moon. And there's this unknowingness or unknown quality to the night where you're in the dark and you don't know what's true, versus in daylight, everything's clear. You can see things for what they are. And so there's this upfront black and whiteness to reality with seeing planets during the daytime, which is, rare that you do. So like this yang and yin nature to understanding the planets. I wonder if you have thoughts about it, Sarah.
Yeah, I do. And just to touch on the quarters really quick again, because I feel like this past year I've really gotten the ability to kind of feel into the life cycle of things just through the lens of working on a business. And I think that, Western people don't like the idea of cycles or circles, and how everything needs to have its beginning and its ending. In order for something new to come and have a beginning, there has to be an ending, et cetera, et cetera. That's kind of the way that I've experienced it on an experiential level, where we go from the quarter of initiation, which is the first quarter and happens kind of close to springtime. That's kind of like this idea energy of just and we've talked about it before on the podcast, having ideas come into fruition and having them come to life. And then there's the quarter of materialization, where things are actually getting put into matter, into form. And then there's the quarter of duality, which has to do with relating and relationships. And then there's the quarter of mutation, which from, it's been actually over a year now since we started working together in the business that I'm working with. And it feels like, the first quarter, it's we have all of these ideas, there's things springing all up and around. Then the second quarter, we're actually doing things, but kind of unselfconsciously, we're just doing whatever we need to do. Third quarter, we're really looking at the way that the things that we've done affect the people that they affect. And then in the fourth quarter, it's okay, now the stuff that doesn't work, we have to let it go. And then we have to have, kind of prepare for the new mutation, or we start to see the way that the new mutation is going to come in, even if it doesn't have any seeds planted or roots growing from it yet. So and then we go back into initiation. And so there's this kind of cyclical quality that I see, and the mutation quarter, I feel so much amazing stuff happens during it, that while it has to do with having to end old things, kill old things, death, things like that, I feel really okay, it's time to change too. This is where change really thrives. And so I don't know if it's not just Sagittarius, because it's also Capricorn and it's part of Scorpio that's in it. But there is this quality of just deep internal changes that are going under, or that are underway, in order to kind of start the cycle over. A lot of things have to go. So I just want to kind of talk about the entirety of the circle. And then as far as evening star versus morning star, I think that the evening star for Venus and for Mercury, there's more of a receptive quality to it, at least traditionally. That's how they looked at it. It's not quite as headstrong. Neither of them are quite as headstrong, even though they are brighter in the sky. Although in the dim early morning hours, they look very bright in the morning too. But yeah, there's just a receptive quality where it's less active and more passive. And so Venus does prefer being a morning star, whereas I think Mercury, I don't know actually that Mercury has a preference from morning to evening star. I'll have to look into that for next time. But by the time that we are in our next week's podcast, they will be visible if we give it like 6 days. So I can definitely touch on Mercury more then.
Okay. Just wanted to hear what you have to say about it. I guess, yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I think, yeah, this is going to be an interesting new lunation cycle. So I'm looking forward to not being in eclipses anymore.
Yeah, well, they're always right around the corner. You like leave one cycle and then like right, it seems like you blink your eyes and the next one comes back. So it's hard to, avoid them, but it's what it is. Anyways, thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a nice new moon, and listen to your inner circle and cycle too, like along with this whole like grand quarter of mutation wheel. Like we have our internal wheels too with the moon within each month, especially if you're a woman. So listen to your internal cycles just as much as you're paying attention to the external ones, because they are equally important amount for you to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I completely forgot to mention this, but if you haven't liked and subscribed, feel free to do so. If we're on your fractal, if we resonate, every week we follow the energies that are happening currently. So if you haven't done that yet, feel free to go ahead and do that. Comment, reach out to us. Our contact info is below the video. And happy holidays if you're in America.
Catch you next time. Bye.